Hi everyone, let's get started. This is the fifth session, 0004. I don't think it's really gonna fill up all of these zeros, but ongoing projects that you're excited about, will definitely keep going, and there's always a place for improvement and enhancement and whatnot. For those who haven't been watching, this is another live session for Project ARK. Project ARK. ARK stands for Acts of Random Kindness. It's a very simple mobile app that basically starts, with a phase zero where you just kind of open up the app and it gives you ideas about doing an act of random kindness. The North Star vision for this app is to make it, connect people with each other, give you some location-based ideas about how to be positive and help people kind of do things. Maybe there's a hospital nearby or an orphanage nearby or a shelter, where it kind of gives you ideas about how to be kind, how to do an act of random kindness. Personally, one of the biggest reasons why I'm building this app is because I feel like, what's the point of having, all that knowledge about designing systems and building software if you can't put it out there to use for something outside of business and outside of profits and outside of, making money and all that, and just mainly focusing on doing something kind randomly out of the blue. Like the app itself is an arc. Like the app, like building the app itself and contributing the app is an act of random kindness in and of itself. And my hope is that because this app is built in the open source space and is built according to the standard, if you're a software engineer or someone who's interested in knowing how software is being built, or if you're someone who's just kind of like want to know how this world of software works, how does a mobile app come into place? It's really about, if you're really interested in knowing how software works, this is the exact same place you want to be. Now, these are not TikTok 30-second sessions. All right. This is a 4 hour extended, sometimes 3, 4 hour. It's only 4 hour because LinkedIn Live will cap you at 4 hour, right? But I can go forever. Like I can go a full stream for 8 hour if needed be, maybe bathroom breaks and prayer breaks, but that would be the only way I step out. Um, so this is a session where we basically continue something we started about 5 weeks ago. Project ARK. I'm going to kind of show you the architecture. You always have to have an architecture. You have to have a map. Where are you going? Where are you headed? What are you trying to kind of accomplish? So here's all the things that we built. We built a lot of things, right? Let me kind of fix that little orange thing because there's no orange anymore in this area. It's all green. Yeah, there you go. So for software engineers, for people who are interested, even if you're not like a software architect or a senior engineer, this, I promise you, this will make sense to you. We started with developing a simple API that talks to a database. This API, let's focus here. This API will basically go and say, give me a list of acts of random kindness. Give me everything you have. Like today, it's just bare bone phase zero. Give me everything you have about an act of random kindness, right? And then, we started building a mobile app. We're using Blazor Maui app to basically develop a mobile experience where it pulls these arcs from the database and then renders them. Now, I'm not trying, like when I'm building this application, I'm not trying to do a one-off real quick. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm really trying to show you how to properly build test-driven application, right? You're building components, you're building brokers, all these concepts of like solid principles, abstraction, Liskov principles, dependency injection, inversion of control. All of these things are baked. All of it is baked right into this system and this app, right? So I don't have to point it out specifically, but obviously, like something like dependency injection, of course, we're building a broker and it gets injected into a service, right? So that's your dependency injection for you. The separation of concern. This is like the broker is concerned with storage stuff. The service is concerned with the purpose and logic and validation stuff. And then the controller is the exposure layer. There's a lot of theories in here that you might not find necessarily in a lot of different places. The standard is a set of truly genuine and novel ideas. Some of it is influenced by other things, but some of them are really, really genuine, like, handling exceptions, the wrapping of exceptions, the try nature of everything. Everything has a dependency and a purpose and an exposure layer. All of that fun stuff is all baked right into that stream. And the best way to learn software is to need it. So we need to build an app. So I'm going to build software, and I'm going to show you all the skills. So I'm going to throw every skill set I have at it, until it actually gets done. Now, also just remember, this is a fun project, right? So we're doing it for a couple of hours every week, every weekend. So if you watch it from the beginning, I think you're going to get a lot of benefits, right? A lot of benefits from just kind of looking at the app and looking at how the software works. It's something that you watch when you're eating lunch, or just kind of relaxing and trying to learn something new. So where did we stop, right? We started building something called BFF. That's not best friends forever. That's the back end of the front end. Remember that term, BFF, back end of front end. And the back end of the front end, which is basically this whole area right here, right? Which is comprised of something that talks to the API. That's this component here in orange. Orange meaning it's still in progress. Um, Something that talks to the API, we already developed that. We wanted something that takes these models and handles the exceptions that come out of the API integration. So we already built that one. Last time we built the view service, which is basically a service that basically converts every domain model or API model or external model into a view model, something that fits exactly the component that's consuming it. This view service is super important for people who are familiar with MVVM model, which is basically taking the model, turning it into a view, taking the view and rendering it for that particular model. And then we started building base components. We talked about, we did a little bit of a POC, right? And the POC was about, hey, this is an MVVM model. This is the application that I'm trying to build, and now I want to render it in UI components. What is a base component, and how did we use Sync Fusion as a tool to kind of render a carousel, right? We talked about all that fun stuff. And then came the most interesting piece here, is the actual Blazor Maui component. Like, we're building an ARK component, and this component is supposed to be the intersection between the data pipeline, which is this pipeline where you're getting the data from, and the UI pipeline. So always remember, like standard compliant software, when you're building user interfaces, you'll always have this kind of intersection where we're building interface. There's this arrow going up, right? This arrow going up is your presentation model. And then there's this arrow going across like this, which is the part that basically represents consuming the data and pulling that data from an external source or an API or a local source or whatever from memory, and then rendering it. So your components are that intersection, right? And that's exactly where you want to kind of make that stuff happen. Today, we want to do something interesting. Well, first of all, I want to try something with you today. I want to try something interesting. And then we're going to talk about states. We're going to talk about what's a component state and how that's important for everybody. So let's just go here and go like pick up where we left off, right? Where were we really, right? We built all that good stuff. We were at the ARK component layer. We pulled in this nice iterations kind of tool, which comes with a .NET library that the standard community built. This iteration is like saying for loop, but in HTML or in markup language, right? Not HTML, markup. So this iteration, instead of seeing people going and saying at for each like this, and they're writing C# code inside of their markup or CS Razor, why do that? That's kind of it's what you call obtrusive, right? You're mixing things together, right? You want your eye to be comfortable looking at the code. And if you're reading markup, then everything you should read on that page should be markup. If you're reading C#, go back to the back end of the front end and basically look at C#. So that kind of makes it a lot easier, even for the people reviewing your code, to look at that code and be like, yeah, I understand what he's trying to say. It makes sense. So remember, the standard is people first kind of thing. It's not building just for the machine. It wants to make the experience of developing software and reading software and doing code reviews for software easy and simple. That's the whole point of it. So we did some iterations, and we basically said, you have a carousel item base inside of this guy. And we basically said, hey, let's go ahead and render and render that one by one, just like that. Now, the tricky part about this is that we wanted to, when we went and tested this, I said, okay, just pass the act right inside that carousel item base and let it render however it wants to render, right? So when we went and built the interface here, the test here, we basically said, okay, you created a bunch of you mocked the API response. That's the ARK view service mock, right? You mocked this API response, and then you basically went back and said, well, since I mocked that API response, can I actually go and verify that every single item that came from my API call has been rendered? So we did an iteration here on the ARK views that were retrieved, and then we started looking into the rendered carousel items to see if there's something that matches the value of that. I want to try something else today. Like I want to see this works. This is fine. We could kind of go and say, okay, just render the item, move on, no problem. I want to show you what that looks like as well. So maybe we need to kind of set up the configuration and stand up the API locally and just basically call that API. I think that might be a good idea, just to kind of have a look and feel and understand what's really happening behind the scenes here. Let's start with that then. Let's go into the brokers in here. Remember when we built a broker API, we basically went and said, go ahead and talk to the configuration and get an ARK API base address, right? This ARK API base address is basically the API that serves these ARK kind of the ARKs, basically the acts of random kindness, basically. So let's just add this app settings in here and start from there. So I'm going to go and add app settings like this, right click, and then new item. You can't see it on the screen because of StreamYard, but I promise you I'm creating an app settings. Here we go. If I can find it. So this is, I wonder if I can share that particular screen with you. Let's see if StreamYard will let me do that. No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't. So, okay, I'll just create it real quick. So let me just type settings. So this is an app configuration settings. No, not the configuration part. We want the JSON part. Let's see if I can find it in here. Settings. I mean, we can literally create it as any file we want. I'll just create one and just say app settings.json here. App settings.json, like that. Okay, so this is just a configuration file that I have right here. And what I want to do with that configuration file is to basically add things in here that will tell my app, especially when you're kind of developing and deploying these things, it's kind of helpful if you kind of have a configuration file so you can have it point to production, point to the lower environment. Like when you're starting to build a bigger enterprise level app, these things help if you're pointing to a particular a particular configuration, right? But how do we teach the Maui app that there is a configuration file in here and you need to kind of be able to read it, right? It might just pick it up out of the blue. I don't know. Like we're gonna try it out together, but I think it needs a special configuration, and I'm gonna find out for you real quick what that looks like. If you bear with me. So let's see here. So if you are setting this up, if you go to your CS proj in here, so this is your Maui program CS proj right here. And then if you go into your Maui program, which is what we're in right now, and then I want to go to the app settings, right? So let's see, the registration of the app settings here looks like it's one of these things, you do them once. So you're not really expecting to kind of know them off the top, but let's just do this. I'm going to build this little method in here. I think there might be even an easier way to do that, but let's just do that. Private static void register app settings like that, and then Maui app builder. So I'm pushing in the Maui app builder in here, and then here's my assembly. So this here is assembly, and then the file path. The file path is basically where the app settings file is supposed to live, right? I'm going to pull that file in. So I'm going to say using stream app settings stream equals, and then assembly. This is the application that we have, and then get manifest resource stream and then the file path. And then if that app settings stream is not null, like that, let's go ahead and add it to the configuration basically. So builder, let's see here. This is your app settings, and then you want basically the Maui app builder dot configuration dot add JSON stream. Configuration dot add JSON stream right there. So basically, I am teaching this thing to basically look at the application and basically have this run, and find the app settings file and run for me. Okay, now I just need to teach it these things. Like I need to pass these parameters to this particular thing, right? And see if that works for me. So I'm just gonna go here and say, here's my app settings. So we're gonna register this app settings right here. So register app settings, right? And it wants some parameters. So do I have the builder? I should have the Maui app builder, which is right here. Here's your Maui app builder. Here you go. And then what else it wants? It wants the assembly. I think we do have the assembly in here. Maybe I need to build that up. Yeah, get executing assembly. I might need to kind of pull that myself from here. Here you go. So that's the assembly where you are. So I'm going to take that assembly and put it right here. So that's the actual app that you're in, right? And then I want the app settings, right? The app settings themselves. So where is the file path to this thing, right? Do I just say app settings and it's already in there? I don't know. We'll find out. So app settings. So here's path. If you do control shift space, it will say there's my file path, right? And my file path here is what? It's the app settings. It's not even uppercase. So settings.json. I think we might need to modify that a little bit, but we'll find out. What I want to do is to basically throw this into a page and render that screen. Let me take a quick question here. Zach says, hey, why you not consider .NET Aspire as a main orchestrator? It will solve all of your problems. What kind of problems is it solving, right? It's not going to teach your mobile app to find an app settings file. Other than that, my only thing is to stand up an API and run a mobile app. So why do you need an entire orchestrator for some 20 microservices to run on your local machine? And you have to install Docker, right? Just to run a simple mobile app. I mean, you have to pick up the right tool for the job that you're trying to accomplish, right? So I don't know what are all my problems that Aspire is going to solve, but definitely Aspire is not a good pick for that. So okay, so let me kind of well, first, they have the app settings.json, right? And my configuration is looking specifically at a value called ARK API base address, right? So let's just go to the ARK API base address in here. I'm going to put that in here. And then I'm going to put here whatever that URL may be that stands up from my mobile app, right? Sorry, from my API, right? Remember the API that we built together? So if I go here and basically pick up my API, this is my API. This is my problem that Aspire needs to solve. I don't need Aspire to kind of say .NET run for me. It's not it's not necessary. You got to pick up the right tool for the job, right? I mean, I don't have anything in particular against Docker, but you're not running the scale to need Docker containers. That's not a thing that you have to run a mom and pop shop for, right? It doesn't make any sense. So remember, we have this API right here, and all I have to do here is just basically say .NET run. If I navigate to the right app, so cd ARK core API. There you go. And then I'm going to say .NET run like that. And it's going to launch the API for me, and that's it. Now I have to have the mobile app just talk to it. So remember, that's the URL right here. And to confirm that this is the right URL that you need to talk to, if I go into my other windows and go to my endpoint explorer and find the ARKs endpoint and just go and say generate request. This is just me testing that the endpoint is working the way it's supposed to, right? So this endpoint right here, I'm just going to replace that at the top. I'm just going to say it's localhost right? 5062. And I'm just gonna send a request here. I remember that we had it, yeah, we had a couple of ARKs. Still someone, thank you. Share something you've learned with people. So the API is running, right? Which is great. Now the API is running, but I want to basically add that configuration in my mobile app just to see if my mobile app can stand up and run. So I'm gonna go back here into my mobile project, right? And then I'm gonna go in here and basically put that exact same address. With the slash, without the slash, we're gonna find out whether that's needed or not, right? We're gonna find out whether that's important or not real quick. Now, all I have to do is just go to really just one of the pages that I have, which is the home page, for example, and just drop my ARK component in here. So this is the ARK component that we built right here. It might need to kind of bark a little bit about the Sync Fusion license. We'll get that real quick, but let's just see if it renders off the bat. Here we go. We have a question here. Hassan, is there any chance you can conduct these streams at time which is suitable for what? Suitable for an Indian audience as well. I mean, it's recorded, right? I try as much as I can. Like my plan was to kind of do it really early today to catch up as many people as possible. But you have the recording, right? So just watch the recording and leave because there are people from literally everywhere around the world. I'm very grateful and thankful for, like, we reached about 50,000 subscribers on our channel. I'm very grateful for everyone that saw that this channel is important and interesting. But it's also, remember, it's recorded. I'm recording it for you. So if it's in a time that's not suitable for you, just kind of watch the recording, and then send me questions and I'll be able to answer your questions. It'll be the exact same experience. Okay, now let's see what happened here. It's basically saying the URI string is a null value. So it didn't really find the configuration that it's looking for, right? Which means that the case is probably that it's not seeing this app settings the way it's supposed to. There is a little trick here, and I don't quite fully understand why it does it this way, but if I type in ark.apps, let's see here. I think I might need to add it as a resource or something like that. I'm not sure, but let's just see if that works. Otherwise, we're gonna have to worry about this configuration thing later when we really want to go live. Yeah, it's still not really seeing the configuration. So let's see why that is. Like, let's see why the Maui app is not seeing that. So this is your file path, right? And this is my app settings. I think one way we can do this is to basically, this is build action content. Yeah, this should be a build action content. So if we put it this way, it might need to be like a resource or something like that. We'll find out as well. We'll find out what the deal is. But basically, this is just the part about, can I actually add configurations and bake these configuration into my app? It's very likely that we need to add it as a resource. We'll find out real soon. Let's see here. This is the configurations, just kind of trying to kind of understand. Yeah, if we probably make it as an embedded resource, that's the missing piece, right? Making it as an embedded resource, that will do the trick for us. So let's do that. Embedded resource, because this is a mobile app, right? So let's rebuild this thing and let's see if that works. There we go. While it's building, intense. Let's see here. Intense Scene says, hi, well done so far, thank you. And then Intense Scene says, I'm curious how will the data, the acts of kindness, how will they be generated? Through AI, right? We're going to generate it through AI and we have to review it so it doesn't give people bad advice, right? I don't want to make sure, I want to make sure that like the acts of random kindness are not just going AI to people. That's a very bad idea, right? I know there's a lot of systems and applications out there that kind of expose AI generated content directly to people without review, without a human reviewer. That's probably not a very good idea, because AI could go rogue and start telling your people to do something that you can't control. And there's probably no automated way to catch this yet, unless you kind of look for certain keywords and stuff like that. I'm not sure. Um, yeah, intense scenes, I want it to be baked into the API, reviewed. Like these, we're gonna generate like 1,000 acts of kindness, right? And let these 1,000 acts of kindness show up for people once a day, right? So once a day, you get an act of random kindness, and then this act of random kindness has been reviewed, making sure that it doesn't kind of put people in harm's way. It doesn't, it doesn't have anything that requires people to have any kind of damage or any kind of liability in any way, shape, or form. You want to make sure, like, you want to think about everybody that's going to be holding this app, right? And you don't want these people to kind of, like, some people will be like, I want to be kind. The app is telling me to, go 50 miles south and find a homeless person and help them out. But what if 50 miles south is a very dangerous area for someone of that age group, or someone of that particular background, right? We have to kind of be aware with these things. Dak says, uh, I'm Ukrainian living in Poland, trying to watch online. Good stuff. Thank you, Zach. I appreciate it. And then our dear friend Greg. Good morning. Good morning, Greg. Thank you for joining the stream. Let's make this happen. Okay, so I know that the API is running, and I already made this as an embedded resource, and I did a rebuild. Let's hope it can find my resource now. Hopefully, I don't know. We'll find out. Yeah, there you go. So watch this. It's working because it's pulling. I know there's the sync fusion thing, but you see it says tell someone thank you, right? And if I go next, it says share something you've learned with people. Oh, it's very small on the screen. I just noticed. Let me kind of let me show people what I'm talking about here. So here's the carousel. This is literally coming from the API, right? And I know it doesn't look much right now because we didn't add styles to it, but every time I click on the carousel, it's going to pull a new value. See, share something you learned with people, tell someone thank you. So however many arcs that we have in the API right now, that's exactly what's coming back from from the API endpoint, right? So that means that this app is working, right? But when you make an API call, it's very possible that you're going to experience a delay. Like, let me just show you, like, as an example of that. Like, if you go into a situation where, let's say your ARK application, your API call, I'm going to intentionally show you an example of a delay that happens with API calls. Especially if you're in a low coverage area and whatnot, I'm going to do something mean here. I'm going to say await task and then delay. I'm going to put 3 seconds just so you see what I'm talking about, right? So let's say your API call, for whatever reason, everyone adapted the ARK app, and now there is a heavy load on the server, and it's taking a second to load, right? And there's no caching. This is the first time you pull this app. All these tricks that we do are not there. See, the app is frozen. It's going to be frozen for like 3 seconds. Did you notice that? Let me kind of do a hot reload again just so you see what happened. Or maybe I need to restart the app. I'm not sure. Let's do it again. So here's the app, right? And zooming in on the app, and it's loading on the screen. It's kind of went blank because I kind of started it twice. Let's try start it again. Here we go. Look, it's frozen, right? Just stuck there, and then it loads that, right? So the what I'm trying to tell you here is that you have to program your component to expect delays. You have to program your component to be able to handle errors, right? And I'm going to show you some of the most amazing error handling mechanisms that we've ever had. It's probably one of the ones that I've like, it's kind of baked in error messages that also give you acts of random kindness. So you still get what you want out of the app. Instead of saying, the app broke, the server, I can't reach the server. Why don't I just hard code random acts of random kindness in the app as error messages? So even if the app has an exception, I'm still loading a bunch for you that are baked right into the app. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Um, let's see here. Nazir says, Hassan, I have an idea for what you're trying to build, but just a quick question to make sure that I am on the same page as you. How is this ARK going to help people in real world? Well, ARK basically gives people ideas to be kind, right? Like you wake up in the morning, you pick up your app, and it says, "Have you considered, saying thank you to someone today, or have you considered helping your neighbor today?" It gives you ideas. It's in the world of ideas, of giving you thoughts about doing something kind. Sometimes we get too caught up in our world that we forget to be kind to each other, and we forget to do something nice to each other. That's what the app is going to do for you. The app is going to say, hey, remember to do this today, right? Remember to do something for someone that can't pay you back for it, or can't reward you for it, or can't do something equivalent for you to it, right? So that's the idea of the app. It's basically ideas of kindness, and you look at the app and you see what it's telling you to do, and you just try to do it as an act of random kindness. I hope that kind of clarifies the idea. Gregory also says, I think it's as a response, your thought is an act of kindness, even if you cannot go the distance to perform. Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree, Greg. Like if you can't just tell someone to be kind and use software and technology to kind of influence this kind, even yourself, it's enough, right? So at least your heart. Yeah, I love what Gregory's saying. Like kindness starts from the heart, goes to the mind, and then it turns into actions in real life, right? So it has to start from within, right? You start kind, you think kind, you do kind, feel kind, think kind, do kind. That's basically how I can explain it. Okay, so just to go back to what we were saying, now that we know that the app is working and it can talk to an API and whatnot, I want to talk to you about component states today. Component states. What are these component states and what do they mean? Component states are around the idea that when your app is trying to pull information and it's delayed, you need a state that represents that. So you basically need a state that says, please wait, loading, rendering, working on it, stuff like that. So we need to kind of start introducing a new concept, a new idea called component state. So let's go into models, and under models, there's views, and under views, I'm going to create something called components. And under components, we have our ARK component. So this is our components, right? And then I'm going to go and create this new model called ARK component state. So how many states that every component has? It actually can be infinite, but there are three main ones, right? The main ones that we think about is loading and content and error. Any component, any UI component out there that you have will have one of these three. There's the state of rendering. I'm still rendering the component. I'm not ready yet. There's the state of content, and then there's the state of error. And I'm gonna show you right now how to test drive that. Like it's really important for me that you kind of understand that we need to test drive component states. The first state is easy. Let's go back to our ARK component in here. So let's go back to components. We need to probably maybe Greg, maybe this would be a like a code drop thing. We need to move components under the views folder, not the services views, but the views server, instead of this layouts and pages and all that craziness. Um, so it shouldn't say components. It should say views and then components, basically. Just a code drop thing if someone wants to pick this up. Okay, so I'm gonna introduce a new property here, and this property will be called ARK component state, and this is here is your state. Should enums be plural or singular? I'll let you kind of think about that. I think state is probably a inconsistent accessibility. Let's make this public like this. All right, here we go. Now let's test drive this. One test that we have to update, that the component should always be before it renders and before it does anything, it should be in a loading state. Okay, so now we have a given before the when, and this given is ARK component state, initial, expected state, and that expected state is ARK component state dot loading. Okay, so that means that my ARK component right here, default ARK component dot state should be the expected state. Should be equivalent to should be, I think should be is just one word. Should be, no, it's just two words like that. Okay, let's just verify that this works. So this is a test that basically say the state has to be always, like before you do anything in your application, your state has to say loading, right? Let's see here. So if you are in the loading state, let's run this thing. And then I'm going to show you a super really nice trick about pretending that your API is delayed in your unit test. That's very wild. I love it. Not a very common thing, but totally worth looking at. Okay, are we passing? Are we running? So just remember what I did with the app settings, because I think that's actually very cool. If you embed the resource and basically just pick up the file as an embedded resource, that works a lot, especially if you're deploying to an Android app or an iOS app or whatever the case may be. Okay, so here we are. It looks like it passed. Fantastic. Let's log this as a passing thing. So which part of this I care about the most? It's basically the tests. You have to be careful when you're staging or committing code. You have to make sure you're committing just the things that you changed, not just everything in the world. I think this was also part of it. So let me stage this piece. And also I am assuming the states. Let me stage this piece as well. The home piece is not part of this. The rest of this is just a different commit altogether. Let's amend that, commit changes. Great. I also did something with the configuration, right? So I'm gonna stage all the little things I did for the configuration piece like this. And I'm gonna go and say, well, I'm okay with adding the component in the page for the time being. I'm just gonna go and say configs register app settings. So this is how your application is going to look at your app settings configuration and be able to find that stuff, right? And then the last thing is the view service. This is just a delay just to kind of explain to you what happened. I don't think we need that change anymore. It's not necessary. So I'm just going to revert that part. Let's revert, undo these changes. There you go. Okay. All right, so it looks like we're all clear here. Now we need to we need to see how the component acts when we are still loading. Like I want to show something that says please wait or waiting, right? So there is three states here, right? You know, when you're designing a UI component and you're working with these three different states, you have to think about, like, when you're doing a diagram, this is my mobile app right here. So you're going from the initial state. The initial state is always going to be loading like this. And from loading, you end up in one of two different states, right? The first state, the happy path state, is you basically going into content state. The not very happy path is to basically go into an error state. This is how mobile apps kind of, if you're explaining, if you're trying to kind of do a flow chart or a diagram of how a mobile app is supposed to render, you always start with loading and you go from loading to either content or error, right? So loading is basically the very first thing that you interact with as an exposure, and you either end up in green, meaning content, or red, meaning error. So how we implement that, I want to show on the screen. Have you ever opened up a mobile app and you found the spinner that says, please wait? We want to take care of that part in that particular mobile app. How do we do that? Let's go into our app here, and I want to go and say, okay, as long as it's loading, I want you to render a particular thing, right? So I'm going to go up in here. I need probably a base label component. And that base label component is going to be the thing that's going to say loading, please wait, or whatever, right? Let's go do that. Let's go into the main branch real quick, or the master branch real quick. We're gonna jump back to that component real quick, but I need a quick label, right? We can change it into a Giphy or whatever we want later, but under basis in here, I'm gonna create a new base component. I'm gonna say label base, like that. And this label base is really just literally just a label like this that has a value in it. So we're passing a parameter to that label base. And that label base is basically supposed to tell us, hey, I'm loading the screen. So here you go, label base dot razor dot cs. And inside that guy, I'm basically partializing. Here's a parameter. Here's a prop, string, value. So that value will basically say pass in whatever you want in there, whatever that may be. That's that value that you're passing in there. Well, we want to introduce that new label base to our components. We're going to introduce a couple of other things, but for now, we want to introduce that label base. So I'm going to go into my component in here. So here's my ARK component. Layout pages. Where did it go? Layout components. These are my base components. Layout pages. I think it was components, right? So here is, it's hiding from me. Let's go here. If you also do control comma like this, if you do control comma, it'll find anything for you in the world. So I'm typing ARK component, it'll find my ARK component for me right here. Right? If I'm looking for an ARK service, it'll find the ARK service for me right there. I don't know why I can't see my ARK component for some reason. Let me just type ARK component. That's very strange. Let me kind of reload the app. Something strange is going on because I actually can't see my ARK component. Unload, save. Oh, I know why, because the ARK component hasn't been implemented yet because I switched to the master branch. That's why. Duh. So, okay, users, Hassan, Habib, bases, label. There you go. And then I'm going to go into, I'm just going to commit that. I'm going to say basis, label base. I don't know, Greg, if you have a, an issue for that. I just want to do a label base here. So let me create a pull request. And then maybe I'll say closes here, closes hash. And then maybe there's a label base. Maybe he didn't create it yet. So I'll just create this pull request and merge it. And then we'll go back to building our component real quick. Let's go here. There you go. Here's the web page. Here we are. And then that's just a label base. Just want to make sure, remember, review your own PRs, just, to make sure that you're not doing anything crazy. Let me create that issue myself. So I'm going to go here and create an issue basis and then label base component. I'm going to create that here. And then let's just go into this little guy and just say closes hash label base component, update comment. There you go. So I'm just going to merge this because we built it locally. We know that it works. And then we're going to run right back into our component just to make sure that we're using that label base, right? So what was the branch? If you properly name your branches, if you have a proper naming conventions and standardized branch names, you will kind of save yourself a lot of time. I see all kinds of crazy branch names, but if you pick up a good branch name and a branch naming convention, you can find all that in the standard team. The standard team is different than the standard itself. It's basically a set of practices. It's contribution from everybody. I'm going to drop the link in the chat here for people who want to just read about the standard practices. How do we name our branches? How do we do all that fun stuff? It's all good stuff. Now, let me pull latest from main, get pull origin master, I think, because it's a master branch. There you go. So now I have my label base right here. Now, if I go back into my ARK component, which definitely exists right here. Watch this. Now I'm adding this other thing after the state, which is the label. So let's go here and say label base. And this is, I'm going to call it the loading label because I'm not going to use it for anything else other than that one particular purpose. So I'm going to make it a loading label. Let's go ahead and make sure that our tests also accommodate that. So I'm in my unit tests, in the default, that loading label doesn't have particularly an initial state, but it will. We're going to pass a state to it very soon once we get into that loading state. I think it might be okay to kind of set it as the default value in it, but I want it to be part of the initialization of the app. So I'm just going to go here and say default ARK component dot label should be null. In its initial state, it's null because we haven't really done anything yet. Is that true? Let's find out. Let's run this. Here we go. It's loading and rendering. Let's go, let's go. I know for the stream, it's terrible to kind of take so long to kind of load things, but I love these little breaks to just look at the comment and see if someone has any questions, but also at the same time for me to kind of get a little sip of tea and just move forward from there. Okay, so we have the label, and this label is supposed to tell people, hey, I'm loading, wait a second until I get you all the arcs. That's the plan. The plan is to kind of say, let it kind of show me all the arcs. Now let's just write a brand new test in here and watch this because this is really fun. Should render loading, right, upon retrieving arcs async, like that. How are we going to do this? I'm going to show you one of my favorite tricks in mocking and unit testing. We're going to force a mock to be late. We're going to force a mock response to be late, and I'm going to show you how to do that super quick. So what am I trying to do here? Well, I'm trying to render a component, but on the API call, I'm going to force that loading. So here's a list of ARK views, some ARK views, some because I don't care about it in this particular context. I'm just trying to kind of show you that the loading happens, okay? And then I'm going to go here and say this dot mock, which is my component mock dot setup. So this is your service right here. Service dot retrieve all arcs async. Watch this, watch this. Returns async. It returns some arc views, right? That's as far as we know. That's actually not the whole story. Watch this. There's actually multiple parameters that you can pass here. So there's value, and there's a new thing called, it's not a new thing, it's just a not common thing called delay. Okay, burn this in your memory because you're gonna need it sometime, right? So at some day, you're gonna need it. If you want to pretend that something is taking too long, mock will let you do that, right? And that delay goes into the time span here, time span, and then from, I don't know, milliseconds, and we're gonna give it just a tiny, quick, tiny delay of 1000 milliseconds. It's like a second, right? 1000 milliseconds is just a second. So I'm basically saying when that call happens, delay, because I want to verify something. Okay, now let's just do the rest. The rest is normal, like this dot rendered ARK component, that render component, and this is my ARK component. So far, so good. And while that rendering is happening, I want to catch that instance where it's making the label say loading. So watch this. This dot rendered component dot instance dot label should dot value, right? Dot value, right? Should be and the expected value, which is string expected loading message, and that should be loading like that. We're gonna find all kinds of artistic things to do with it. For the time being, I'm just building a system, right? So expected loading message, like this. And then I want to verify that when that happens, the loading happens, I'm only calling this ARK view service only once. So this is mock. There you go, mock verify, and this is your service. Service dot retrieve all arcs async should happen only times once. There you go. So you see this? This is basically me saying, oh, all of the sudden that label is no longer going to be a null, right? It's going to be visible. And of course, this test is going to fail because we haven't implemented yet, and this is test driven, right? But let's just see what happens in here. Let me run this real quick. Let's watch it fail and be happy with it burning to ashes, and then we're going to bring it back. There you go. You have a fail, and probably the fail message is that, you know, object reference is not set to an instance of an object. It's probably a nice, like, kind of good engineer, good citizen thing to say, and say render component instance loading label should not be null. This is a nicer way of having the test telling you object reference is not set to an instance of an object, because it's a surprise. It basically says, hey, you haven't accounted for this, right? You haven't accounted for the fact that you have something that's not set as a reference. So I'm just going to set this label to be verified, not to be null, before I try to access the value inside of it. There you go. So I can get a better message. There you go. This is better. This that rendered instance loading not to be null. That's a much, you can't see that message, but you'll be able to see it in here. There you go. That's a much nicer message than saying object reference is not set to an instance of an object. Okay, let's submit this as a fail. Here we go, fail. And then I'm going to go back to my component and make this actually work. So how am I going to make this work? I'm going to go here and say this. I'm going to make things really, really interesting right now. So before the loading happens, I want to go and say, go ahead and set up that label first. So here's my label base. And the value of my label base is going to be loading like that. Hang in there, because we're going to work on the states and stuff like that super soon. Like Hassan, like someone would say, Hassan, you're showing me this and this at the same time. What's going on in here? Well, not really. You know, I'm going to put conditions in here using sharp styles, sorry, pretty Blazor, to kind of render different states in here. Okay. What else do I want to do here? I want to make sure that the state itself is set to loading. Even though it's the initial state, we still want to do that. So this dot state is set to loading, because this state is going to change later after the API call. Like after the API call in here, we're going to change that state to something else. Now, is this enough for us to kind of load the screen? Not really, because we're checking the component itself. So we need to do a ref. Watch this, ref. And then I need to say loading label, because that's how the unit test is accessing these markup components and verifying. Okay, maybe it's even a better idea. Let's not set that in here. Let's set it up after upon the initialization. So I'm just gonna go here and say this dot label base dot value equals. It might complain because you're supposed to set the values on the component itself. Yeah, probably not. Probably do it this way. Probably this way is better. Let's go ahead and run our tests and see what happens. I'm going to run all our tests this time. They should all pass, but they shouldn't. Like they will all pass, but they shouldn't. And I'll tell you why they shouldn't. One of these, there you go. This guy is happy now. So you see how I kind of simulated the idea of loading. Because if I don't put that 1000 in there, I mean, in this particular case here, it's not going to make any difference because I'm not changing that component. But soon, this delay is going to be extremely important. It's going to be extremely, extremely important. Why is that? Because in the component where things are supposed to have already rendered, I'm supposed to come here and basically say something like this. This dot rendered component dot instance dot state should be, and the state here should be what? Should be content. So like this. So ARK component state, expected state like this, ARK component state dot content. So the state has changed on that component, and we're test driving that. So this is expected state is that. This of course is going to fail because I haven't changed the state on that yet. But more importantly, I want to go and say that rendered component dot instance dot loading label should be null. Like I shouldn't be showing that component anymore at all, right? Now let's run all these tests again. Remember, I told you they shouldn't all be passing, but this time they won't be passing because the content state should eliminate the exist. There you go. So it should render ARK views. Now that's broken, right? And the requirement here is very clear. It's basically saying you need to change the state of this thing and hide this label away. I don't want to see this label anymore. I don't want to see the loading state anymore. So how are we going to do that? Let's start with the simple stuff, right? The simple stuff here is to basically say, oh, you already loaded, then this dot state equals our component dot content. Our component state dot content. We're done. So we were in loading state, and then we loaded the ARK views. They rendered wherever they are, and then now we are in a content state. That solves only half of the problem. I'll show you. Like the test here is complaining that the state should be content, but it found loading. If I run this test again, it will say you solved one problem. There's another problem in there. Let's watch this. Here we go. Look, another problem. It says I expected this component to be null, but you're still saying loading. I don't want to see this component anymore. So how are we going to do that, right? I'll tell you how we're going to do that. There's this thing called condition. And this condition comes from Pretty Blazor, this little NuGet package that we built here with the standard community, right? And this condition needs an evaluation. So the evaluation on this condition basically says, are you in a loading state? Basically, are you in a loading state? So let's go here and say this dot state equals ARK component state. Let's remove the dependencies here, right? And then I want to say loading. So you're basically evaluating inside this guy. You're returning I can say is, right? Is works? No? Ah, shame. This here is equal state. So let's see what this guy says. Tag helper condition requires a value, right? Okay, so if I do, let's see, evaluation, I usually would just, and I'm gonna kind of put it in a method because you're not supposed to put C# code in your tagging, but let's just see here, attribute evaluation, whatever, right? Let's put it in a method. Let's be good. Let's go here and say private Boolean is state, right? And then you're basically saying component state like that. And then you're basically going and saying, is this dot state equals the state that you're expecting, right? And then I can go here and say is state. Can I do that? Is state ARK component state dot loading. Does this work? Let's find out. Here we go. Is state evaluation, attribute evaluation on tag helper element condition requires a value. Tag helper bond attributes system type Boolean cannot be empty or contain white space. Right. I get that part. Let's see here. Let me go back to the utilization of this. I wanna make sure I give you the right stuff. So in the condition area, see, I built the library, and I don't know, and sometimes I forget how to actually pass the stuff to it. Oh yeah, we could probably do that. Yeah, let's do that. Is loading state like that, because it's an evaluation. So if I put an open close parens, that would probably make it happy. Probably, right? So this dot state equal loading like that, and then I could just go here and say is loading state like that. Let's see. Hopefully that'll make it happy. And I think we also need to match, right? That's what I used to do. Match like that. And if I'm in a match state, I need, oh, that's what it was complaining about. It was basically saying, hey, you still need to add things. like that. Okay, so condition, right? And then there is match, and inside that match, basically there is this situation in here. Okay, I can get behind that. Um, Now, what is it saying? It's basically saying unclosed tag with no matching in tag. Why? I have condition and condition. It's not happy with that. Let's go here, condition, like this. And then we have the match thing. Let's give it a second. Blazor takes a second to kind of think for itself. So we have match. I think it's just missing with me. I think really that's so okay, label base and then ref and then loading label, right? And then you have the value. Let's put the parameters on the next line like that. And then I'm basically saying loading dot 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 like that. So this is basically me saying, hey, when only render this when we are in a loading state, right? And otherwise we are in a not match state, which is the not match state will render that carousel. Okay, this is not the end of it, by the way. Like we still have the error state, so don't get too excited. But for the time being, this should solve that problem. Let's go back here and run this. This should do the trick because this will completely hide. Let's just hope it builds. I don't know. It seems to be angry about something. Unclosed. I'm still not happy about unclosed tag. I really think it's tripping, but let's just unload and reload the solution. Yeah, you don't have to trust whatever it's saying. We have to just kind of see if it works. Yeah, it's not happy about something. So we close the condition, we close the match, we close the not match. Carousel is closing, iteration is closing. This is all golden. I wonder what else could it possibly be angry about? I don't want to do this. Interesting. Let's see here. Control slash. Oh, not that. Control shift slash. I'm trying to get the AI to tell me some ideas and opinions. Let's see here. Control shift. I forgot. Let's do this. Let's see why this guy's well, suddenly it disappeared. I don't know what made it disappear, but it disappeared. Let's make it run again and see. Yeah, just weird Blazor stuff. Not sure. Yeah, it's still not happy. Let's see why it's not happy. It's not really not happy. It's still kind of rendering. Let's try again. So there are build errors. Yeah, I know there are build errors, but we want to know why there's build errors. It basically just is complaining about the same thing, even though like the view here is not really showing actual build errors. Yeah, Greg says alt slash. Yeah, that's right. What is the error here? Let's see what AI tells us. Let's put this thing to work. What did it say? Just garbage? It's basically just shuffled my usings. That's not very useful. Did it just get rid of my usings? That's crazy. No, that's not it. I think there's something else going on. I'm not really sure, but we probably need to just give it a quick build and see what happens, or a rebuild. Okay, I'm back. Let's see why that happened. So technically it doesn't see any issues here. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna close Visual Studio and start it back up. That's the only thing I could think of right now, because I know that the code makes sense, right? The code itself, I don't see any issues with it, but maybe we'll catch it. Maybe we'll catch it. We'll see. So let's go back here. Here's the app mobile, and then let's try and run the test again and see what happens. Here we go. Okay, we're in action. It's loading. Greg, we probably need also another issue to delete the delete me, because we have a file that basically says delete me, but I forgot to actually remove that. That's probably one thing we want to add. Here we go. Yeah, here you go. Maybe this is a better error. It's basically saying is loading state is not doing what it's supposed to. So what if I do that and maybe run? Hopefully that would be a better answer. Here we go. Let's go do that. It's building. It's taking a second there. There you go. Now it's happy. I honestly don't know what was up with it, but you know, I guess restarting Visual Studio would do the trick for you. Like if it's asking you for something super crazy, I think it makes sense for you to kind of question its actual thing. Like, is it actually doing the right thing? I did do a little mistake though. Like in here, I said, no, I didn't forget it. Yeah, there's the content state. So now check this out. If I run the actual application, you're gonna see it actually saying loading if I choose to delay the API. Watch this beauty. If I go into the view service and go here and actually introduce a delay, await, task, delay, and put in like 3,000 seconds, right? And try to actually run the app, watch what's going to happen. It's going to call the actual real API, but I'm pretending that there's a delay there, because that's how life is. Like the person that's going to be using your app is not always going to have the best network. So let me kind of set this up as a startup project, and let me just run this and watch what happens. Watch this. Look, it says loading. Do you see that little loading screen? And then it's going to render tell someone thank you and all that fun stuff. Right? How cool is that? Right? Because that's basically what we're trying to do. We're basically catching the state when the component is still trying to fetch data for you. Okay? So now that I introduced this, I can basically happily go and say, okay, I introduced the loading state, but that's not the end of it. There's still the error state. Let's just kind of take it one by one. So this is the should render ARK view. Let me put this here as a pass, like this, but there's still more, right? There's a state where the application basically just doesn't know how to render the system. Like, you know, it called the API and it couldn't find anything to do. How do we do that? Let's write a new test, the exceptions test. This is a brand new test in here. And it doesn't matter what the exception is. Like, we're not kind of splitting hairs on what the exception is going to be. We're just gonna basically put a really super generic error message that basically say, hey, this happened, right? So let's go do that. Public async task should render error if if retrieve ARKs fails async. Okay, so we're going to pretend that something didn't work, something just didn't come through, and we're going to see how the system, we're going to be really smart about this. I want to still kind of use a different kind of label, and that different kind of label will kind of give me the opportunity to go and say, well, this is, this is a state where I am still rendering the, like I'm telling the user that an error has happened, but in the kindest kind of way. It's not like the system failed, everything on fire. No, it's going to be smarter than that. So let's do given when then, and this is, I'm going to do an exception, like the generic exception, some exception. It doesn't matter actually, even though we're handling errors specifically, I want it to be just some exception, because what's going to happen here is that I want to make sure that um, the regardless of what internal error that may happen, that's not the concern of that end user. Like the end user shouldn't care about that at all. Okay, so how are we going to do that? So here's new exception. Whatever that exception may be, it doesn't matter. So I'm just going to make this var like this. And then I want a message, right? So string expected error message, right? What is the expected error message? I want to say something like, you know what? I couldn't get you the ARK today, but I want you to use your imagination. Let's see if Copilot, this is probably a very strange thing to ask Copilot to kind of help you out with, but I think it's worth it. Let's try it out. I mean, it's running GPT-4 anyway, so it should work. Give me an exception message that tells the user something like, we couldn't retrieve an act of kindness suggestion to you today. Look within and find kindness that fits you. I don't know, something like that. Basically, instead of saying that the system went on fire, we're basically saying, hey, go ahead and, yeah, there you go. It's doing more than what I asked it to. It's writing the message for me. Look at this. That's pretty cool. Uh, it just went and actually figured out that I'm asking it. That's pretty cool, actually, about this particular thing. Look what it wrote. We could retrieve an act of kindness suggestion for you today. Please look within and find kindness that fits you. I guess that's fine. Gregory says you need to enable agent mode in your GitHub settings for more large language model suggestions. I don't know if I want to do that given what happened yesterday, Greg, but maybe, maybe. So this is an error message that basically happens. How do we do that? I'm going to go here and say this dot my mock service mock setup service dot retrieve all arcs async, and then I'm going to go and say throws async. So it's throwing an exception, some exception, and I really don't care about the exception because I want to make sure that I render that particular thing, that particular view, right? Remember our expected state, so ARK component state, expected state is to be error. So your ARK component state will be error like this. Okay, and then I'm gonna basically render that. So this dot render ARK component, just the same thing that we did together. It's gonna be render component, ARK component right here, like this. And then I'm gonna go and start verifying things, right? So we need a new label, and we need the error label for that before we kind of continue that endeavor. I need to go here and say, go and create another base label for me, but this, not the whole base label, but just another label like this, public label base error label. These labels will be replaced with things later, like there will be a session where we just are sitting there making things pretty. That's all that we're doing. Maybe we're gonna do it today. We'll see how the day goes. We're still in the first hour and a half, so I think it's fine. Error label, right? And this error label basically will render an error message, and it will exist only in the state where that error label is supposed to render a particular message, right? So going back to my tests here, to my exception tests, we're gonna also need to verify that this thing doesn't exist outside of that flow. So render component.instance.error label, right? Error label should not be null. Should not be null. That's the first thing. Okay. What else? This rendered component.instance.error label.value should be the expected message. Okay. What else can we do? I want to verify that the state of the component, this dot rendered component dot instance dot state, should be the expected state, which is error state, right? And then I want to verify maybe that my mock, I want to verify no other calls. Sure. I want to verify that my mock was called because that's where the error message came from. This dot mock dot verify, and then this is my service, and the service dot retrieve arcs has been called only times once. I don't know why autocomplete insists on having the open close parens. I don't need those. Is there anything else? I don't think so. I don't really think so. We might need to kind of go a little bit more deeper and say, make sure it doesn't have any content, any other content of any kind. I don't know, but let's just make that test fail first, because we basically got super, super close. We handled all the states. Now the last part of this is to make it actually look pretty, and I'm going to introduce you to something really cool. Like if you're a developer, especially a backend developer, and your design is not really your kind of thing. There you go. It says exception happened, an error occurred, the world has fell apart. I'm gonna put this as a fail in here. I'm gonna go create that new state. Watch this. So in here, in this ARK component, remember we said we need a state that basically says things fell apart and whatnot. Let's put a try catch for this guy. Here's a try catch. Look how I'm moving that code up and down like that. If you do Alt and go up like this, it will move it for you, and then Control KD will clean it up for you. I don't care about the exception message. I'm not rendering to the end user the exception message, so I'm going to leave the catch intentionally left open, regardless of what kind of error happened. But what I'm going to do is that I'm going to change the state into something called error. So we are in an error state. That's really pretty much all I have to do here. But on the component side, I need to do something else. I remember we had a recent upgrade. Mabruk did a recent upgrade for the conditions library, the Blazor, pretty Blazor, to make it kind of handle multiple kind of states at the same time. Like our problem in the past, we used to do this. We used to do something really ugly. Like we would go like this and do condition, condition, condition like this. And basically here we would say is content state like that. And here we would go and say is error state, right? But I think he simplified this. I think he pushed a new update that made it even better. I think it was a switch case. Yeah, he made it in a switch case. Yeah, I think it's a switch case. I think the switch case is probably better. So what's new here is that basically going and saying switch like this, and then here's my switch state, which is the T. The T here is gonna be the ARK component state like that. And then you have a thing called value, and that's your state. So that's the state right here, like this, right? I think he might have changed it to the T value. I'm not sure. And then we basically want different state here. So switch case like that, and then the same thing, T value. It would be nice that it could kind of infer that, but I guess that's fine. So our component state, and then the value here that we care about, or the when, right? When, and then is loading state, like that. So that's one state, and then we can replicate these states here across the board for different states like that. So look, that would look a little bit better. I'm not sure. Maybe he did the evaluation on the state itself. So state dot loading. Oh, that's even cuter. Look at that. ARK component state dot content, and then ARK dot component state dot error. Look how beautiful this thing. Look how he made it so beautiful. Way better than this whole match, not match stuff that's going on. Way better. Way better. Like that. Okay. And then I want to put uh, the label base in here for a reference to the error label. Remember the error label that we put together? That's the error label right here. And I want the value of this to be that long sentence that we had together just a second ago, which is, let me go find, I think we put it in our test. Let's do it right here. So this is the exception. Here's the error. Here's the error message. Right? It's a very long message. It probably makes more sense if we just put it kind of in a method and pull that error message, because putting it in the, let me just do this first. So private boot, we don't need those anymore. But I'm going to have a string and then say get error message. Like that. And then my error message will be right here. It's much nicer this way because I don't want like to add a 50 line, like a 50 character long line into act of kindness. We couldn't retrieve an act of kindness suggestion for you today. Please look within and find kindness that fits you. Yeah, I love that. It's kind of a nice way of doing, like, here, the value, and then I'm just gonna go here and say get error message. Yeah, something like that. So this is basically saying, let's remove all that garbage. We don't need that anymore. So see how our component is so sweet and it's very nice. It's basically handling different states, right? Well, there is a piece, we removed too much of the garbage. One piece of the garbage that we need is to basically have um, the content area here. So let me kind of revert super quick and then drop that thing that I just copied. Yeah, this guy right here. So I'm gonna do this and then take the carousel base and drop it right in the content area in here, and then basically remove this out. There you go. That's way cleaner, much better this way. Now let's see if that actually solves our problem. Does it actually solve our problem? I don't know. Let's run our tests. So we had that test that says, hey, you need to show a problem that there is an issue when an exception occurs. Let's hope all of this goes green, because that basically another huge milestone for us, because we basically set up, there you go. So we set up the foundation, the different states for the component, and every state here is being handled nicely. That's amazing, right? So now you see how we're rendering failed state, and the passing state and the loading state here. This is fail, this is pass, like that. There you go. The only thing that's left for us, actually two things are left for us in the software, like the development side, and then we go to the switch it to DevOps and infrastructure mode and try to actually deploy our app to App Store and Google Play. One part is the look and feel. Your app has to look really pretty, right? It needs to be something that people think about and basically go and say, yeah, I like how this app looks. But let's just see if the error state actually actually works. Let's go and do that. Let's go into a let's go into the view service and pretend that an exception has occurred. So this is my view service right here. I'm going to go and say throw new exception, whatever that exception may be. Exception. There you go. Just a new exception. So this is us pretending that the system couldn't handle something. An error has happened in your app. You always have, like when you develop even web applications, whatever you're developing, you really have to kind of handle that. Look at this. It basically says, we couldn't retrieve an act of kindness suggestion for you today. Please look within and find kindness that fits you, right? That's probably the nicest exception message I've ever had to write. right? It's basically saying, hey, I can't handle, for whatever reason, the API is down, something is not working and whatnot. Another suggestion that I had, and it's up to people that are watching, is to basically have baked in pre-built acts of kindness, right? So even though the application is actually failing and it's not able to connect to the API, we are still serving a hard-coded list of acts of kindness in the app. I'll let you kind of guys decide, do you want to inform the user that we're having problems and, you kind of need to look within and find something that fits you, or do we want it to be something more like, you know what, I couldn't get you an act of kindness today from the API, but I have hard-coded ones in the system. I don't know. We're gonna have to we're gonna have to make a decision as a team. What do you think, Greg? What should we do? What's better? To tell people something is broken, or basically just and tell them, hey, just find something kind to do today. You don't have to rely on us. Kindness is already built in within you. Or do we just hard code like 50, 50 acts of kindness and just pick them randomly and load them on the screen? What do you say? Just an idea for people to kind of think about. Rick says not to be picky, but you need a space. Yeah, I know. I saw that and it bothered me too. Let's let's test drive that, right? Let's test drive that. I'm gonna go into the exceptions area and basically say, yeah, the reason why I didn't see it because of the end and the beginning of the line. But if I do this, this is gonna fail. Watch how sophisticated our tests are. It's going to say, hey, this is not the exact same sentence, of course, so it's failing. This is, look, it's basically saying, here's exactly where it is. That's wild. Check that out. And then I'm going to put that as a failing test in here. I'm going to make sure that I don't commit the view service change that I made, the faking of the error. And then I'm going to go into the component itself and do the exact same thing. I'm going to put a space here. And then basically this guy is going to pass. That's a good catch, Greg. I saw it too, and I was like, okay, someone's going to pick that up. Don't worry about it. Here you go. And then here's the pass. And I'm also going to commit just the razor component. We're gonna have to listen to Greg. You can't let Greg, catch something on you. It's reviewing the code. Okay, let's run this again and and make sure. What about now, Greg? Does this look better? So we couldn't retrieve an act of kindness suggestion for you today. Please look within and find kindness that fits you. Yeah, too many code reviews. That's right. So how about now, Greg? Does this look better? I think it looks better. Please look within. And it scales. It's nice. We need to get rid of that hello world. Let me get rid of that hello world as a quick kind of a cleanup task. Let's get rid of this in here. So it's actually just showing what we tell it to show. So code rub remove hello world message from home page. Okay, and I'm just committing that one guy, staging and committing. Sounds great, looks great. Okay, Greg is happy with it. Okay. I still don't know what the direction that we should take is, right? Should we, like, I'll leave it up to the community, right? If your app can serve its purpose without firing an API call in a low coverage area, poor network, something bad that's going on, and it's not able to authenticate with the API, it should be able to still serve its purpose offline, meaning that give people what they're looking for. Why should they bother that the app is not connected to the internet or anything like that if you can just kind of inspire someone with an act of kindness? That's one idea. The only problem with that is that it doesn't live long term, right? Because acts of kindness are attached to dates, right? Remember, like the model that we talked about in here, it's attached to a date. So if I go into the ARK model or ARK view model, it's attached to a date. So are you going to do a new deployment every single time you want to update the dates? It just doesn't seem to scale very well. It's not a very good idea. But someone also could argue when the error happens, just generate, like you have hard-coded acts of kindness, but you're generating for the date of today and tomorrow and the day after and whatnot. So that's a problem that we can solve, right? Either or, I think it's fine either way. I think the message itself is fine. I'm gonna take out the delay, sorry, the exception, the fake exception that I'm gonna do here, and then we're gonna jump into the last phase of developing a component, which is making your component look pretty. How do I make my component look pretty? I did kind of made a call out for designers. Like if you are a designer and you're watching this, I don't know why I don't know why a designer would be watching a stream like this, honestly. But if you are a designer and you're watching this, your thoughts are actually really valuable. But let's just say we couldn't find a designer. We don't have a designer. And we need something that actually works for us. We need something that gives us idea. There's always ideas, right? Well, we're in this day and age of AI, right? And it might make sense to kind of leverage some of the existing tools that are out there that can kind of help us find ideas, whatever these ideas are, maybe. So I'm going to go here to Google. I'm going to share my screen here. I'm going to tell you, where do we get ideas from? Here. Watch this. There's this new thing called Lovable. Lovable. It's an AI thing. It's really cute and beautiful, and it does a lot of nice things. And what I'm gonna tell Lovable is say, design a mobile app layer that will display acts of random kindness. I need a loading state and an error state and a content state views. This that's it. I think that's pretty much it. And I'm not just gonna let Lovable do the magic, right? I'm gonna let Lovable kind of do some magic for me. What does Greg say? Greg says, this is all new territory for me, mobile and UI dev with the standard, so I am a newbie. That's fine. I appreciate your humbleness, but I'm trying to make sure that the UI development is as close as possible to backend. But when it comes to design and all that, you need inspiration, right? You need a professional, just like how we're professionals building backend and all that kind of stuff. There are the look and feel and how you feel when you look at the app. I mean, anybody can put a box with words inside of it and the box will say things. Sure, could do that. But can I actually come up with a design, or can AI help me find a design that's actually beautiful for my mobile app? I don't know. Let's find out. It looks like it's done, but there's nothing. There it is. Watch this. Oh my Lord. What do you think, Greg? That looks pretty nice. Get another act of kindness. Did you see the loading screen? Watch this. New act of kindness loaded. Small acts, big impact. Daily kindness. What do you guys think? People watching on the stream. Does this look like a nice view? You like that? I want to see the excuse me. I don't see the error state though. We need an error state. I see at the bottom here. Is it actually loading? Donate books to local library. Listen without judgment to someone who needs to talk. It's actually work. Did it build the whole app? I don't want it to build the app. I just want views for the app. I also want to see the error state. So what does the error state look like? Intense Scene says it looks great. Greg says it looks really nice. Can the same pop-up work for the error state? Probably, probably, probably. How do I get to the error state? It says, looking at the error state component of your daily kindness app, here's what it displays. Icon heading will show me. I can see the error state is already implemented in your app. Okay, how do I display the error state? Styling, why? He's basically saying it's already implemented. What is this? AI with attitude. It's not giving me the, it already built it all in like TSX. I think TSX is what? Is that TypeScript? I don't know. No, this is more like React. It built the entire app and you just need an API to kind of call it and it will do it for you. But how do we get that error state to happen? That's the question, right? It has hooks, use mobile, use Toast. It has components. It's pretty much, by the way, React components and Blazor components are very, very similar, right? So I can see, like, look at all these different components that it kind of implemented. We're going to have to kind of implement something similar, right? Yeah, I don't know. Intense scenes. I don't know if the same pop-up work for the same error state. I don't know. Maybe that's how we're gonna do it, right? So are you talking about the pop-up at the bottom? Well, if we do the same pop-up at the bottom, well, what renders here front and center? Like we need something front and center to basically say a problem has happened, right? And maybe we just don't do any error state at all and let the error state be that actual text in that particular component. Maybe, I don't know. Okay, so we don't need the React code really. We need the HTML, right? The HTML is what we're really gonna rely on to kind of make sure these things work. I think in the components area, I told you it works exactly the same as Blazor. So you'll find divs, right? And then there's a heart component. I can guarantee you there's a thing here called heart. Let's find ABCD. Where is that heart component at? Because he's not going to give you that kind of heart. That's not a native component, that heart app, right? So let me find heart. It doesn't exist. That's strange. Where did it come? Oh, that came from Lucid React. So that's a thing that's just, it's an icon basically, something like an icon or an out of the box component. Okay, cool. Um, it just has a bunch of things that are going on in here. I wonder if I told it, make the app in pure HTML, CSS. So I don't want it to build it in React. I want it to be pure CSS and HTML. Greg says, can you force an error in the code behind? Probably, but I don't play much with React and I don't like JavaScript, so I'm not gonna do it, Greg. I'm gonna have to understand that code and read it. That's hazardous work conditions for me. Let's see here. So it's basically gonna try to just give me pure, I'm actually almost afraid to ask it to write it in Blazor for me. So it's just gonna go and write it in Blazor. I'll just be copy pasta from here forward. I don't know, we'll see. Yeah, it still wrote script JS because it wants that action, but hopefully that scripts JS piece is the piece where we basically replace it with C# and .NET. We'll see. I feel like we should have shopped around a little bit, Greg. Like I feel like we should have like, oh, look at that. Finding kindness, daily kindness, spreading joy, new act of kind. Oh my Lord, look at that. Leave positive reviews for small businesses. Take a few minutes to write encouraging. You know what? That's actually a beautiful act of kindness. Look at the difficulty. It has a difficulty for it. That's exactly what we're going to build, guys. Write thank you note for someone, buy coffee, and it has icons and everything. That's wild. Well, I guess that's going to be our app, guys. That's basically what we're going to do as an interface. Um, I don't know where. Yeah, this is all the CSS for the app, and here's the pages. It still did it all in this TSX stuff, which is like blah. All right, it still did all that. Do I just start a new project and ask it to do it again? But I really like that view. I'm not sure it's gonna generate the exact same view, right? But I think that's our app, guys. So anyway, that's fine. We're gonna take this and basically try to implement it, like implement this in Blazor. So that's gonna be our final app, basically, is to go and say, you know, I want this to be my implementation. And if I'm not wrong, I think it did render the error state in the beginning. It did show the error state in the beginning, and it was also good. Volunteer at local charity. Hold the door open for someone. That's nice. Help someone carry heavy bags. Yeah. Okay. Let's build that next session, right? We did all the coding stuff. Now we do the artsy stuff for the app, and then hopefully we wrap up that component real quick. I think this is a good stop for us. I think we're getting even closer. I think the UI pieces though is going to require more components to be developed, so we need to brace for that. Needs its own session where we make things look a little bit nicer and whatnot. Um, Greg here says it's actually nicer. We can still extract the cosmetics from it. Yeah, over to Blazor. Yeah, I agree. That's pretty much what we're gonna need to do. It looks like, we're gonna need to have a button, new act of kindness, to generate a new act. I didn't actually really intend for it to work in that particular way. I want it to be like more like a carousel because we implemented a carousel, but that's actually way better. I like this more. It basically goes and just hits the API and gets a new act of kindness. I think that's totally fine. Um, and then this is the loading state, finding kindness, preparing something beautiful for you. Here's the error state. Oops, something went wrong. Failed to fetch new kindness suggestion. Don't worry. Kindness is always worth the wait. They came even with ideas for it. Check this out. It came even with a better idea for the exception. I think that's probably what we're going to do in our app. Anyway, thank you everyone for hanging out with me today for these couple of hours. Let's hang out next week and make sure the app looks just like how we saw it in this Lovable app. And if you haven't I've never heard of Lovable, go check out Lovable. It's actually a pretty cool thing. You just log in with your GitHub or Google account, and it pushes code to your GitHub repo and whatnot. It's gonna be great. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop comments in the comment section. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you all for hanging out today. Take care. See you next week.